Hello.
Hi, Archie. How are you?
Did you hear? Good.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
How is your day going?
Good.
Are you doing anything special?
No.
Did you have online school today?
Yes.
Is that fun?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we are on chapter 4, right? This is called Moon Rabbits. Let's see what happens for Jack and Annie now that they are outside the moon base. They went through the airlock and they are on the moon, standing on the moon. I can't imagine. Would you like to do that?
No. Older.
When you are older, would you like to do that?
Maybe.
Maybe. Now, how old are you, Archie?
7.
So you are the same age as Annie. So when Annie is 7 years old, she is walking on the moon. Wow, that is pretty exciting. And what does she say? She says,
Oh, wow.
said Annie. She took a step forward. But Jack, frozen. I'm going to get the orange highlighter here and highlight stood frozen. The word frozen means when something freezes, right? Like if we have water and we put it in a freezer, then if it's 0 degrees Celsius, then the water turns from liquid water that you can drink in a cup into an ice cube. It becomes frozen. So usually the word frozen means like ice, right? Because you're so cold. Well, when we use it this way, when we say stood frozen, we're not talking about Jack being so cold. We're talking about Jack can't move. Just like when water, right? Water can move around in a cup, right? But when it freezes, it becomes an ice cube, the water can't move anymore because it goes from being a liquid to a solid, right? So if the liquid water, oops, hang on. If the liquid water, I'm going to draw it like that, goes and turns into an ice cube, the water does not move anymore. It's just a block of ice. That's what it means when we say Jack stood frozen. He cannot move. Okay, why can't he move? Well, sometimes the reason is because you're scared or you're nervous, but it does not tell us that Jack was scared or nervous. It tells us that he wanted to get a good look at everything first. He is just being careful and cautious. I used those words yesterday when I described Jack, and I'm going to write them here. Careful begins with a C, and cautious. Cautious has some tricky spelling. Careful and cautious, those are words we can use to describe someone who is not just going to run on out and jump on the moon and not worry about anything. Careful and cautious is someone who wants to have a plan. They want to think about it first. And that's the kind of thing Jack likes to do. He likes to have his map. He likes to look around and see where is he going to step before he steps there. So he wants to get a good look at everything first. Are you more like Annie or more like Jack?
I don't know.
That's a good, I know, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I know either, right? Because it's hard for me to imagine being in their shoes, going through an airlock and getting ready to open the door and step out onto the moon. So Jack looks around and first he stared at the ground. Okay, so stare is to look at something for a long time. He was standing in a layer of gray dust as fine as powder. Footprints were everywhere. We saw some footprints yesterday when we were looking on Google at some pictures of the moon, the surface of the moon. And I think those footprints are still there all the way back from, was it 1959 maybe? When astronauts first went to the moon and walked on the moon and they left footprints. And I think those footprints are still there. Footprints were everywhere. Jack wondered who had made them. Now, we have to remember, actually Miss Camp forgot, so I have to remember that they are in the future. They are not there in 2021. They are there in after 2031. And we know that from the last chapter. And when they were reading in their book about the moon and read that back in 2031, astronauts came here and built a moon base. That means that 2031 must be in their past and already happened. So they are there after 2031. And that means there could be footprints there from, you know, when the astronauts went in 2031 and built the moon base, right? So we have to remember there's some fiction here, right? Because what's happening for them is just, it's fiction. It did not really happen in real life. So let's see. So Jack wonders who made them. He reached into his pack, that's like his backpack, for the moon book. To his surprise, it was as light as a feather. So we're going to take a quick look here at this part. This part here follows a pattern. So what is it? What was as light as a feather? Let's talk about what it is for just a minute. What are they talking about?
It's a moon book.
Yes. Okay, good. Okay, so the moon book, okay, that's what it is. So the moon book was as light as a feather. So I want to just show you something here before we go any further. There's this cool thing that we can do when we're writing in English, and you'll be able to see it when an author does this. You're such a good detective that when you're reading, you will start to see this pattern. And what they can do is they can make something called a simile. And a simile has a little pattern to it that you'll start to notice. And this is how it works. You're going to compare two things. You need to have two things. So this will be the first one could be a person, or it could be a book. Okay. You know, the blue doesn't show up very well, does it? Let me do orange. But it's going to be a noun. It's going to be a person, place, or thing. Okay, so this is going to be noun number one. And then we need to have another thing. And the other thing, I wonder if yellow will work. This could be the feather they're talking about. I'm not sure how to make a feather. Or it could be an animal. But this is going to be noun number two. So this is a person, place, thing, or animal. So you start by having these two nouns, okay? A person, place, thing, or animal. You have to have two of them. And then you're going to say that these two things are similar, like the word simile. Similar means there's something about them that is the same. And so we're going to pick an adjective. An adjective is a word we can use to describe something. Okay, like adjectives that describe Archie are artistic, talented, funny, kind, interesting, smart. Okay, so these are words that describe you. They're adjectives. So we need to think of an adjective we can use to describe both of these nouns, something they have in common. So in this example, noun number 1 is going to be the moon book. I'm kind of running out of space to do this here. All right, so noun number 1, this one here, is going to be the moon book. And noun number 2 is going to be a feather. So then the author thinks, what's a word I can use to describe both the moon book and the feather? How can the moon book and a feather be similar at all? What could possibly be the same about the moon book and a feather? And he says, well, they're both light. Now the reason that the moon book is light on the moon, do you know why? It's the same reason that when we're on the moon and we're walking, we can bounce. Do you know why?
Why?
It has to do with that word gravity. We talked about that when we were reading Geronimo Stilton's Space Mice. So gravity is kind of what pulls us down to the ground so we don't float away. It's kind of like in the middle of Earth. It's almost like this big magnet. It just kind of pulls us down to the ground so that when we walk, we don't float off into space. But on the moon, the gravity is not very strong like on Earth. So it's not really holding us down very with too much force. And so when we're walking, we can kind of bounce because it's not holding us to the ground as strongly as the gravity does on Earth. And that means that even things like a book on the moon will not, like the more that the gravity pulls it down, the heavier it feels. But if the gravity is not pulling it down very much, because there's not very much gravity, then it will feel very light. It will feel kind of like it can float away. So the book feels very light. So on Earth, you might not compare a book to a feather, but on the moon you can, because they're both light. Well, how can you put this into, how can you say this when you're writing in English? There's a pattern, and the pattern goes like this. You take the first noun, that's going to be noun number 1, and then you say is or was, and then you say as, and then you have as blank, this is going to be the adjective, as, and then you're going to have thing number 2. So this is the pattern, and then that's the end of your sentence. So the pattern is going to be thing number 1 here, thing number 2 here, and the adjective or the describing word is going to go right here in the middle. And this is what is similar between this one and this one. So anytime you're reading, if you see it, if it says is as blank, then you can say, oh, that's a simile. And they're using this thing to help us understand something about this. Okay, and this is the part that is similar between the two. So the way this would read is, you would say, the book, I have to remember not to use blue, it doesn't show up very well. The moon book is as, let me change colors. How about this pink? Okay, the book is as light as, and then this one would be a feather. So the simile is the book is as light as a feather. And so here we have noun number 1, noun number 2. We have the adjective in the middle, and the part that makes it the simile is this pattern, is as blank as. So you're going to see those two, you're going to see as 2 times. And so when we look here, we can see it. As and as blank as. So this is a simile. Okay, so that's something that I wanted to tell you about. Now we're going to turn the page. So he is Jack. He found a picture of footprints on the moon, okay, in his moon book. So now he's reading in his moon book. He reads, "The moon has no rain or wind to blow the dust around. So footprints will never wear away naturally, not even in a billion years." Let me show you how big a billion is. A billion is, that's 1,000. That's 1 million. And that is 1 billion. So he's basically saying that if there's a footprint in the dust on the surface of the moon, it will never, pretty much never, will it ever disappear. Because the moon doesn't have any rain to wash it away, it doesn't have any wind to blow it away. But kind of an important word here is naturally, because naturally is when something happens because of nature. Nature would be the rain and the wind. So if you just left it up to the rain and the wind to make the footprints go away, then it's not going to happen, not on the moon. Here on Earth, we get wind and rain, so footprints can disappear. Now, even on the moon, footprints could disappear if a person wanted to make them disappear, right? Like if a person went out with a broom and started sweeping up the footprints, or took their hand and just kind of wiped them, you could get rid of the footprint, you know, because you want to. But if you leave it up to nature, we can see that word nature right in the word naturally, then that would be things like the rain and the wind. But since we don't have rain and wind on the moon, the footprints will not disappear. So that's kind of an interesting fact. This is a fact about the moon. Okay, so Jack continues and he says, "Oh man," that's kind of like saying, "Oh brother," Jack said. The moon was this, although let me stop for a minute. There is a little bit of a difference in English when we say, "Oh brother," or "Oh man." "Oh brother," we say a little bit when we are, both of them mean like we can't really believe it. But I think in English we say, "Oh brother," when we think something is a little bit ridiculous and maybe we're not super happy about it. But with "oh man," I think it's more of just like, wow, oh my goodness, you know, like I can't believe it, like that's wow, that's amazing. Okay, so the moon was the stillest place. This word stillest means nothing's moving. That EST on the end means most. Okay, so of all the places that he had ever been, this place is like nothing moving, right? So it was as still as a picture, right? Because there's no wind. And its stillness would never, ever end. Do you want to see a picture of a place that Miss Camp went to? I'll say on a glacier in Alaska. And then I want to show you the blue water. So this right here is a good picture of a glacier. Okay, and so then I went on a helicopter ride and landed on top of something like this. Okay, and then I think I remember seeing that the water up there was really kind of really bright blue like this. Anyway, there's no town, there's no cars, there's no people living. It's just so quiet. It's like nothing was moving. It was just so quiet. The other thing I did was something called parasailing. Parasailing over Lake Tahoe. Okay. So you can see over the lake, there's a really fast boat, and connected to the boat, you can see that rope, that white rope, and then it goes up to a big balloon and then some people, right?
Yes.
Sailing is when you are up in the sky and there's a balloon holding you up in the sky, and then it's connected by a rope to a motorboat that is driving around the lake. Okay. And when I was up there in the sky, it felt like there was no sound, there was no wind, I could hear nothing. It actually felt really still. It was, I never actually experienced anything like that on Earth ever in my life anywhere, because I did not hear anything. No sounds at all. And everything just seemed very still. So it was very interesting to me. I thought that was cool. I liked that experience. But I have not been on the moon. I do not plan to go to the moon. Let's see. It was as still as a picture, and its stillness would never, ever end. Jack stared at the ink black sky. A lovely blue and white ball glowed far away. What was that?
Earth.
That's right, Earth. For the first time, it really hit Jack. They were in outer space. Look, Annie cried, laughing. She bounded past Jack, almost flying through the air. She landed on her feet. Then she jumped again. I'm a moon rabbit, she called. Jack laughed. How does she do that? He wondered. He turned a page and read, because Jack likes to get his information from books. So we talked about this just a moment ago with the gravity, right? He says, he read, a person weighs less on the moon because of the moon's low gravity and lack of air. If you weigh 60 pounds on Earth, that would be maybe about how much you weigh. So on Earth, you probably weigh about 6 pounds. I know in Taiwan, we use kilograms. In America, we use pounds. So in America, your weight is probably about 60 pounds. But on the moon, you would only weigh 10 pounds on the moon. So even lighter. And then Annie says, don't just stand there reading, said Annie, grabbing the book from Jack's gloved hand. He tossed it into space. Uh-oh. It flew far away because it's so light. Jack started after it. He bounded up and down. Boing, boing, boing. Now he felt as light as a feather. So here's our simile again. And this time we're comparing not the book, but Jack to a feather. And what is it that they both have in common? They are both light. And so we have our pattern. He felt as blank as, and then now number 2. So that is another example of our simile. Okay. So there they are. There's Jack and Annie on the moon. And what do you think this is over here in the sky?
Earth.
And what color do you think it looks like to them?
Blue and green.
Blue and green.
And white.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so Jack says, look, he called to Annie, I'm a moon rabbit too. Are they really rabbits? Have they turned into a rabbit? A bunny?
No, they didn't.
Why are they calling themselves a rabbit? Why are they saying, I'm a moon rabbit? I'm a bunny rabbit?
Because they are jumping very high.
That's right.
And rabbits like to jump.
That's right. So they're comparing themselves to a rabbit because both the rabbit and them can jump high. Where Jack's boots hit the ground, moon dust gracefully sprayed into space. The book had landed at the edge of a shallow crater. We saw a picture of that yesterday, and we can see the crater right, I think this may be right here. It's that little hole in the ground. Although it could be very big. I don't know how big craters are. Maybe there's some little ones and some big ones. When Jack reached it, he tried to stop, but his feet slipped. Uh-oh. Remember he said yesterday, make sure we don't fall over? He fell right over and lay on his side. He tried to stand, but he was off balance. He tried again, but the dust was just too deep and his spacesuit was too clumsy. We saw this word yesterday. They had an ly at the end of it.
Clumsy.
And it was clumsily. And so clumsy or clumsily means we're not able to move very well. You okay? Asked Annie. I can't get up, said Jack. You shouldn't have been goofing off, said Annie wisely. It's kind of funny to me that Annie says that. It's funny to me that Jack is the one that has this predicament. I've used this word before with Geronimo Stilton. The word, oops, that's not going to work. A predicament is when something happens and it causes a little problem. That's a funny E I made, isn't it? And it's hard to fix it. Like if you fall down and you have a hard time getting up, that's a predicament. It's hard to get out of this problem. And it's funny to me that Jack is the one always planning. He's so careful and cautious. And Annie's the one that's kind of crazy. She's the one that's always kind of goofing off, which means being silly, maybe a little crazy. And yet Jack is the one that fell down and has this predicament or problem. I think that's a little bit funny. And Jack says, you goofed off first, said Jack. Now help me up, please. Annie started toward him. Don't fall too, warned Jack. Right? I mean, if they both fall down, then what are they going to do? I won't. Okay, that's what Annie said. Don't worry, I won't. Annie moved very slowly. She half floated, half walked. Give me your hand, she said. Annie grabbed Jack's hand. She pressed her boot against his and pulled him up. Phew! Thanks, he said. No problem, she said. It was easy. You were really light. Thank goodness. That's what Miss Camp says all the time. Thank goodness, said Jack. It's impossible to get up alone, right? He might be light, but he needs some help. He picked up the moon book. It was covered with dust. He brushed it off. Oh, wow, look, said Annie. She stood at the edge of the crater. What is it? Said Jack. A moon buggy, said Annie. The buggy was parked in the crater. As soon as they say parked, I'm thinking a car or some kind of vehicle. A vehicle is something that we can use to travel. It's not our feet.
Oh, vehicle.
Something we can get in to travel, like a car or a bus or a plane or a train or a boat. Well, this buggy was parked in the crater. It had 4 huge wheels. Let's go for a ride, said Annie. We can't, said Jack. We just have 2 hours of air in our tanks, remember? I bet we will find the M thing faster if we take the moon buggy. Annie bounded into the crater. And this is where we're going to stop. And tomorrow we will find out what happens if they get into the moon buggy and if that helps them or we don't know. All right, what color would you like for your star?
Blue or blue?
All
All blue.
All blue it is. Okay, so let me hit the stop share so that I can say goodbye, so long.
Peter Chin.
Bye, Archie.